Protesters and supporters show up as Shanghai's deputy mayor arrives in Taipei for an annual exchange between the two cities. Opposition lawmakers physically barred ruling party lawmakers from the room to push ahead controversial changes to recall laws.
好，无异议，通过。
Several hundred people are feared dead as a cyclone slams into a French territory off the coast of Africa. Plus, environmentalists and farmers fight to preserve one of Hong Kong's last expanses of undeveloped land. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Leslie Liao. Taiwan's main political parties are criticizing each other ahead of a goodwill forum between Taipei and Shanghai. That's after Shanghai's delegation excluded Taiwanese politicians critical of Beijing from a lunch invitation. Cadence Quaranto reports.
A lunch at the upcoming Taipei-Shanghai Forum is coming with a side of controversy in Taiwan. Shanghai's delegation has excluded members of Taiwan's Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP, from a meal it will host for Taiwanese officials during the forum, starting on Tuesday. The forum is one of the few remaining cross-strait exchanges between Taiwan and China, and the DPP, which views Taiwan as a sovereign country, a stance opposed by China, has criticized the decision.
这显然就是选择性的邀请。那请问蒋万安所谓的越有争议越要交流，不就是因此而破功吗？
But opposition lawmakers from Taiwan's Kuomintang, or KMT, who favor closer relations with China and were invited to the meal, questioned why DPP officials would want to come.
民进党的议员平常谈到对岸也都张牙舞爪的哦。那既然话不投机的话，何必来吃这顿饭呢？
The debate over lunch is just the latest controversy in an annual event held every year since 2010. This year's forum is the first to take place in Taipei since the pandemic. While some Chinese officials have already arrived, Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council rejected 10 members of Shanghai's delegation last week, including Jin Mei, the official in charge of the city's Taiwan policies. A high-ranking Taiwan Straits Exchange Foundation official has urged Taipei's mayor to address the recent arrests of 3 Taiwanese nationals in China, as well as the 2023 arrest of a Taiwan-based publisher during the forum. However, the mayor's spokesperson has suggested that such issues are not his responsibility.
那以后是不是蒋万安来兼任海基会的董事长，不让上海的这个台办主任来到台北？那这中间我们要去找谁沟通呢？是不是有一点自相矛盾？
While it remains unclear whether other cross-strait issues will be brought up during this year's forum, Shanghai and Taipei are expected to sign agreements on smart medical care and zoo animal exchanges. But with every part of this visit proving contentious, any deals signed are sure to come under scrutiny. Ryan Wu and Cadence Quaranta for TaiwanPlus.
Shanghai Deputy Mayor Hua Yuan and his delegation have landed in Taipei for the Twin Cities Forum, where they were met by media, supporters, and protesters. Our reporter Chris Gorin was at Taipei's Songshan Airport for their arrival and brings us this report.
Well, it was a lively scene today here at Taipei Songshan Airport, where Shanghai City Mayor Hua Yuan and members of his delegation arrived in the city for the Twin Cities Forum. Could say it was a smooth operation for members of the delegation who walked through the halls taking no questions, got into their car, and left. At the same time, there were protesters from all sides of the cross-strait issue holding demonstrations outside. There was a pro-independence group shouting slogans at the vice mayor as he got into his car, and further down the street, there was a pro-unification group there to greet the members of the delegation. I spoke to members from both groups, and here's a little bit of what they had to say.
China has always wanted to invade Taiwan, no matter softly or strongly, but it is not as what Jiang Wan'an said that we have a very good relationship, but actually it is not. And the most ridiculous is that we are pass a wrong message to the international world.
希望战争不要在我们 中国土地上发生这个战争，希望我们两岸是畏中华，两岸同胞血脉相连。
Now, another notable event is during the pro-independence demonstration, a man came over and began shouting very loudly and was actually dragged away by 2 police officers and taken across the street. After that, he gave a short speech, and it turned out he was a member of one of Taiwan's smaller pro-China parties known as the New Party. He gave his speech and left without incident, but it did cause a bit of a ruckus. Now, one thing the events here at the airport today show is that the cross-strait issue is still very sensitive in Taiwan and brings out a lot of emotions on all sides of the political spectrum. And with this being the highest profile cross-strait exchange still standing, there's sure to be plenty more debate and political discussions over the next 2 days. Alex Chun, Devin Tsai, and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
KMT lawmakers are moving fast to advance controversial amendments that could make it harder to recall public officials in Taiwan. Tiffany Wong was at the legislature earlier today.
A controversial amendment to raise the threshold for a recall vote is moving forward in the legislative process after the opposition Kuomintang legislators did everything that they possibly could to make sure that it passed out of committee review. The Internal Affairs Committee was set to review the amendments for a 3rd time, but the ruling Democratic Progressive Party legislators were blocked by masses of KMT legislators occupying the hall and even putting chairs and desks in front of the door to the meeting room and even covering it with plastic wrap. Now, the KMT then called together committee review without any DPP members present.
好，无异议，通过。
The meeting was adjourned in just 3 minutes with only KMT members and their allies present to vote, which means that it can now move on to discussions on the floor. Now, immediately following the vote, we saw several DPP lawmakers voicing their concerns about the legislative process in this meeting on social media. One legislator comparing the KMT's actions to that of the Chinese Communist Party, and another saying that it brought up feelings of a martial law period. They say that KMT officials are so set on raising that recall threshold because they're afraid of being recalled themselves. Now, the KMT quickly held their own press conference with their caucus whip accusing the DPP of using similar tactics in the past. Now, the bill will go on to cross-party negotiations before any final vote is held. And there's another controversial amendment to add a signature verification requirement to recall petitions. That's going to have its 3rd and final reading on the floor on Friday, meaning we can expect more clashes in the legislature in the coming days. Eason Chen and Tiffany Wong in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan has received a batch of advanced tanks it purchased from the United States. 38 M1A2T Abrams tanks arrived at the port of Taipei on Sunday. The military transported them to a training center in Hsinchu County after their arrival. Taiwan ordered 108 of the advanced battle tanks in 2019 in a deal worth over $1.2 billion. They are the first new tanks Taiwan has received from the U.S. in 30 years. The rest of the order is scheduled to be delivered through 2026. The leader of South Korea's ruling party has resigned following a vote to impeach President Yoon Suk-yeol. Han Dong-hoon was a staunch defender of the president after he attempted to impose martial law earlier this month. And he continued to support Yoon during an unsuccessful vote to impeach him. But in a dramatic move, Han reversed his stance and backed a second successful impeachment vote over the weekend. That's after it came to light that he was one of the politicians Yoon had ordered arrested during martial law. He has since called Yoon a great threat to democracy. Authorities fear that several hundred, even thousands of people are dead after Cyclone Chido slammed into the French island of Mayotte. The storm has left a trail of destruction and is being described as the worst in a century. Rosie Greninger reports.
Residents of Mayotte seek shelter from Cyclone Chido as it made landfall on the French island in the Indian Ocean. The storm hit France's porous overseas territory with winds of 222 kilometres per hour. Being described as the strongest in 90 years, it caused extensive damage. flattening entire towns, cutting power to more than 15,000 homes, tearing roofs off buildings and uprooting trees.
C'est le vent, c'est le soufflement du vent et la panique que j'avais, hein, parce que j'ai crié, nous avons besoin d'assistance, nous avons besoin d'assistance. C'était des cris, parce que je croyais que ça allait être l'affaire pour moi en tout cas.
The precise death toll of the disaster is unknown, but it's expected to reach several hundred people and may run into the thousands, according to a top local official.
Au centre de commandement avec tous mes collaborateurs, le plafond du centre opérationnel s'est envolé. On s'est retrouvé face à la tempête, comme chacun d'entre nous, on l'a vécu. Et donc cet événement, forcément, il a un décompte beaucoup plus important. Nous essaierons de le faire, voilà, parce qu'il nous appartient évidemment de dresser ce bilan.
Rescue crews are on the ground searching for survivors, while 1,600 police and firefighters have been deployed to help recovery in the island with a population of 320,000.
Il y a des rapatriements sanitaires sur la Réunion et éventuellement sur la métropole dans un deuxième temps.
A plane load of aid, including food, water and emergency supplies, is being rushed to the French island. And President Emmanuel Macron, who is in Corsica meeting the Pope, has promised to continue providing the assistance.
Terrible et que certains ont tout perdu la vie, perdu tout. Et voilà, d'une île à l'autre.
As residents here come to terms with the aftermath, Cyclone Chido is now bringing further devastation as it slams into neighbouring Mozambique. And with concerns growing in Mayotte about the lack of access to shelter, food, water and sanitation, survivors know there are more challenges ahead as they confront this widespread destruction. James Lin and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up after the break, a Chinese underwear factory girds itself for incoming U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff hikes. Stay tuned.
I want competition with China, not conflict.
The entire world has great interest in keeping Taiwan's chip industry functional.
So the silicon shield that supposedly has been protecting Taiwan.
How many years the TSMC can still maintain its competitive edge?
What do you see as the next big shift in the semiconductor industry?
Taiwan's take on global headlines. All that matters, TaiwanPlus.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. 7 foreigners in Fiji have been hospitalized due to suspected alcohol poisoning. The 7 people reportedly drank cocktails at the Warwick, Fiji resort bar before falling ill. Local authorities say their symptoms have improved and they are now in stable condition. This incident comes a few weeks after the death of 6 tourists in Laos due to suspected methanol poisoning. The final 5 members of the Bali Nine drug ring have returned home to Australia after spending almost 2 decades in an Indonesian prison. They were given life sentences for trying to smuggle more than 8 kilograms of heroin out of Bali in 2005. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese announced their arrival after months of negotiations with the Indonesian government to repatriate them on humanitarian grounds. Albanese vowed to tackle narcotics trafficking.
The 5 men committed serious offences. Australia shares Indonesia's concern about the serious problem illicit drugs represents. The government will continue to cooperate with Indonesia to counter narcotics trafficking and transnational crime.
Of the 9 convicted, 2 were executed in 2015, 1 died from cancer in 2018, and the only female member was released that same year. Manufacturers in China are preparing for big changes, with U.S. President-elect Donald Trump promising more tariffs on Chinese goods. Reese Ayers reports on how one underwear factory in the place, known as China's lingerie capital, fears tariff hikes could leave their business hanging by a lace thread.
Patrolling a sea of lingerie, factory boss Lei Tong-rei inspects his mammoth stock of erotic clothing at a warehouse in Lianyungang, a city 5 hours north of Shanghai that's home to a county known as China's lingerie capital.
我们从事情趣内衣销售工作已经有18年了，只要有人类的地方，就有我们的情趣内衣。
Lei's been in the panty-making business since he was in high school. And by his best guess, currently around 100,000 workers produce lingerie in Guanyun. Lei says 70% of his revenue comes from sales to the United States. And business has been booming due to a tariff exemption rule known as de minimis, which allows packages valued under $800 and mailed directly to individuals to be shipped tariff-free. Financial services group Nomura estimates that around $240 billion worth of Chinese overseas sales this year benefit from the de minimis exemption. But it's a loophole both the Biden and Trump administrations have proposed to close, one they say is being exploited to traffic drugs like fentanyl. Coupled with Trump's promise of steeper tariffs on all Chinese imports to the US, Lei is feeling anxious.
关税的增加也好，对我们来说，都是有一定的风险存在的。我们还是比较担心这种情况，但是我们还是有准备，就是说他们确实会这么做。
That uncertainty is pushing Lei to consider developing other markets. But with the EU and other countries considering similar restrictions on Chinese imports, the livelihoods of the lingerie capital's roughly 1 million residents hang in the balance.
有吧。 可能有，但是今年的话，消息不是都不好嘛？今年的话，就比往年的话都，整体来说都是没有往年好的。我觉得反正今年赚钱不都很难吗？都赚不到钱。
Despite the looming changes, one professor at a Shanghai business school thinks that some sectors, like lingerie production, won't be hit too hard, as Western consumers will be willing to pay a higher price for goods that will probably keep being made in China.
These are not the ones that, for example, like battery or high-tech stuff that, for example, you say you have to bring back your production here, your supply chain here. These are the things that are either going to be there to buy or they're not going to be there. So if they're not there, then the consumers, some buyers who want it, they're going to demand it and they're ready to pay a little bit higher prices.
For now, Lei's search for new business models and clients continues, as he and manufacturers across China are anticipating potentially seismic changes to the largest trade partnership on the planet. Hank Xu and Reese Ayres for TaiwanPlus.
Vietnam is looking to cut severe pollution choking its capital city, Hanoi. Part of the government's plan is to reduce the number of gas-powered motorbikes on the roads and replace them with electric alternatives. As Rosie Gweninger explains, Gen Z drivers are leading the charge.
Taxi driver Phong Kak drives his electric motorbike through Vietnam's heavily polluted capital, Hanoi, using a mask to avoid the fumes. Here, gas-powered motorbikes rule the roads, and the exhaust of the country's 77 million bikes account for 2/3 of the poisonous smog in Vietnam. In the face of the unbearable pollution, Phong is among a growing number of Gen Z workers turning to electric vehicles.
Khi mà đi xe xăng mà dừng ở đấy mà mình chỉ muốn vượt đèn đỏ, không muốn đứng lại lâu. Cái mùi xăng, mùi dầu lên rất là ghê.
And he is not alone in wanting change. Government officials have ordered that 1/4 of all two-wheelers across the country be electric by 2030 to battle the air crisis. And the electric mopeds are now more accessible at a price as little as $500. But there are still issues preventing more people making the switch.
Tôi không thích đi xe điện vì xe điện không được điện, đi sẽ không khỏe và đường đèo các thứ thì sẽ không an toàn. Còn đi xe xăng, xe số thì nó sẽ an toàn và thuận tiện hơn nhiều.
And those who have converted to electric feel long charging times cause a loss in work and income, with battery recharging taking up to 3 hours. But a Vietnamese company has created a quick fix, setting up stations across Hanoi where riders can instantly swap a depleted battery for a new one.
Thì hiện tại là công ty đang hợp tác với các hãng về vận tải như là Grab, Bee, Lazada, Shopee, rồi là Viettel Post và nhiều doanh nghiệp khác nữa. Thì cái đón nhận của các doanh nghiệp này đều rất là tốt và họ đều có những cái mục tiêu và có những lộ trình để chuyển đổi sang xe điện. Và tài xế cũng đón nhận rất là tốt.
Despite the efforts to make e-bikes more convenient, many in Vietnam remain hesitant. This company's founder is urging the government to help drive momentum through incentives, including waiving registration fees. But transport experts warn electric vehicles alone won't fix the issue.
Và bản chất là cái bài toán đấy nó cũng rất là dài hơi trong việc là cái chuyển đổi về sở hữu và sử dụng phương tiện xe, giảm ùn tắc. Bởi vì xét cho cùng ấy, nếu mà chỉ chuyển dịch một giữa xe 2 bánh xăng sang xe 2 bánh điện chẳng hạn, thì thực ra bản chất ùn tắc là vẫn thế. Cái mạng lưới đường vẫn vậy thôi.
To help free up gridlocked streets, residents here are being encouraged to embrace public transport. Even with these changes, eliminating severe air pollution will take some time. But as more drivers make the switch to electric, this city is one step closer to cleaner and clearer streets. Dolphine Chen and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
A tourist injured while trespassing onto railway tracks in southern Taiwan may be fined up to $1,500. The woman was part of a group of hikers who stepped onto the tracks of the scenic Alishan Forest Railway to take photos despite warning signals from the train. She was struck by the side of the train, sustaining minor injuries to her leg. 62 passengers on the train experienced delays of about an hour. Strawberry prices in Taiwan have spiked as production drops by half. Cadence Quaranta reports on how climate change and pests are taking a bite out of one of the country's favorite snacks.
Plump and red, and usually abundant during late fall to spring in Taiwan, strawberries are found in all kinds of desserts and drinks. But this year, strawberry season is looking a little different, with Taiwan facing a shortage after producing around 50% less than usual. That's because hot temperatures, likely influenced by climate change, as well as pests and diseases, are causing crops to die.
2个台风前都非常的炎热，又是我们栽种期，那苗矿种下去之后呢，就比较容易死掉。那死掉重种又是慢。
The shortage of strawberries has caused prices to soar in Taiwan, with 1 kilogram of strawberries now costing over $30, and meaning some are choosing not to use the fruit on their desserts.
目前草莓很贵，所以我们就会用其他的水果来代替。
But some farmers in Taiwan's central Miaoli County, which produces most of the country's strawberries, are trying something new, a different kind of planting method where strawberries are planted in elevated containers rather than in the ground. This protects strawberry crops from hot temperatures, and farmers say it's been working, increasing their profit.
预估提升1.6倍。再来，我们因为气候的影响。
Farmers say as more strawberries grow, prices will return to normal, likely after Lunar New Year. But for now, Taiwan's strawberry shortage continues. James Lin and Cadence Quaranta for TaiwanPlus.
Hong Kong's government is planning a massive development project on wetlands and villages in its new territories area. But farmers and environmentalists are fighting to preserve one of Hong Kong's last expanses of undeveloped land. Wesley Lewis has more.
Right on the doorstep of mainland China, Hong Kong's Deep Bay wetland is the city's largest and most important marsh. Just across the border is the towering skyline of the megacity of Shenzhen. Hong Kong's government has been eyeing this 300 square kilometer tract of undeveloped land for a massive development project that would push out the area's villagers and farmers. But locals say they are holding out for as long as possible.
你政府逼到落嚟收，我都無可奈何要俾過佢㗎啦。 但係你話喂，我哋強求仲喺度講緊，我哋點咧咁講？咁佢一日業主收我租，我都照喺度住。
Aqua farmer Chan Kwok-sun has been managing his fish ponds here for nearly 4 decades. But the government's ambitious proposal, known as the Northern Metropolis Project, would greenlight an unprecedented scale of development, one that would see Chan's farm filled in along with the surrounding wetlands that conservationists say should be preserved.
我哋係應該要珍惜，諗下點樣可以更加利用佢成為即係一個更加可持續嘅城市，而唔係話我哋再使用呢一啲已經僅存落嚟有限嘅資源咧，去做一啲無窮嘅發展。
Conservationists say Hong Kong has the largest and most intact piece of coastal wetland in South China's Greater Bay Area, hosting crucial habitats for numerous species of migratory birds. The Hong Kong government says their urbanization plan would deepen integration with mainland China and create housing for around 2.5 million people. But local authorities argue the development goals would come at the expense of those who live there now.
嗱，即係講句好聽啲咧，就係犧牲小我，完成大王，係嘛？講句唔好聽嘅咧，就我哋不斷俾人割，即係一幅幅咁割出去。
Construction has already begun here for the Hong Kong Shenzhen Innovation and Technology Park, which, when completed, will be the city's largest tech industry hub. Although local officials and villagers say it's unlikely the city government will budge, they continue to appeal to keep their village from being torn down, fighting for their right to stay on this sought-after plot of land. Kama Shu and Wesley Lewis for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Finally, we bring you to Spain's Barcelona for a parade of Santa Clauses on motorcycles. Ho, ho, ho. I'm Liao. Take care and see you next time.